Hey everyone, Liam here, and welcome to episode 8 of the Kicking It podcast. I appreciate all the support and you guys listening in. It's been about 4 weeks now since the last episode of the podcast, just before the clay court season, and we've definitely had some interesting things happen so far this clay court season. I mean, of course, Yannick Sinner's not here just yet, but we've had some players sort of step up to the plate, some which you would expect, some which you would have expected a couple of years ago, but haven't really expected recently, and some players who have really sort of trying to find their way through and get themselves back into their best. So before we get into that, if you enjoy the content on the channel, please like, subscribe, and subscribe to the podcast on any audio platform that you're listening to. It really helps us grow the quality shot tennis community. But with that, let's get on to, obviously, I think the big elephant in the room. I think the person that most people have been talking about so far this clay court season has been Carlos Alcaraz. Of course, just withdrawn from Madrid due to the two adductor injury that he sustained in Barcelona. Whether it was in the final or whether he felt something, in the semis as well, it's you don't really know. But he is injured. He has had to withdraw from Barcelona, and he's taken some time to rest and recover, which is completely understandable, completely fair. He wants to be at his absolute best for the French Open. It is an interesting thing. Is he going to be really coming into Rome, playing Rome and looking, to play competitively in Rome, or is he fully going to just try and recover for the French Open? It really just depends, because obviously all these Masters 1000 tournaments are very stacked back to back to back in the clay court season. And he said it, even Alcaraz said it himself. He has sort of recognized the incredible ability of Rafa Nadal to play these tournaments: Monte Carlo, Barcelona, Madrid, Rome, Roland Garros, all back to back to back, and successfully managed go win them most of the time, or go extremely deep in them. And he's shown that even just doing the Monte Carlo entire week and the Barcelona and reaching the final of Barcelona is tough on the body. And for someone as in good shape as Carlos Alcaraz is, these things can happen. And unfortunately, we're not going to see him in Madrid. Obviously, a two-time champion here in Madrid, and definitely would have been the favorite for the title coming into the tournament had he not been injured. But here we are, and it's unfortunate. But on the other hand, you have to say he's showed some great tennis in Monte Carlo. Of course, he had a few matches where he had to sort of come back and really show his grit and his spirit of fighting. But I feel like when he was down, you never really thought that he was out. Potentially, mostly in the Arthur Feast match, where he was down that love 40 in the second set and down 3-1 in the third. But once he saved those 3 break points in that second set, I felt the momentum was just definitely going to switch and go to his side. He did play well in Barcelona as well, solid tennis. Of course, facing Holger Rune in the final, going into that, most people, including myself, would have thought that Alcaraz would have beaten Holger, just because of the fact that Holger really hasn't really played his absolute best tennis over the last year and a half. Obviously, the last, you would say, amazing performances from Holger would have been 2023 clay court season. He played well. 2023 Wimbledon, he played well, and then it's sort of gone downhill from there. But it's great to see that he's finally sort of getting himself back into this sort of great shape, and I would say not shape physically, but mentally, that he's focused, he's consistent, he's finding his shots. Obviously, it's only 1 week in Barcelona. Right now the tennis world, especially on clay, is quite open in terms of who will do what. So you really need to see him do this 2-3 tournaments in a row to say, okay, he's back. We're here, and the Holger party can start again. But he's definitely happy. Obviously, that Barcelona title, an incredible title to win, definitely meant a lot to him. You could tell by his reaction, both on the court during the trophy ceremony, but also afterwards on social media. It meant a lot to him, I think, just to get a bit of weight off of his shoulders and sort of a little bit of pressure off of his shoulders, and be like, okay, you know what, I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable now. Let's continue on this momentum. He is back in the top 10, so that's definitely going to help his seeding going into the French Open. He will be of course, looking to replicate some success he's had there in the past. He's played well in the past there. He's beaten the likes of Tsitsipas there. He's beaten the likes of Holger Rune, Casper Ruud there. So he's had he's had the opportunities to play some good tennis in at the French Open and also at Rome. So he will be looking to make that momentum last. Obviously, here I'm recording this before his second round, but his first match in Madrid. So hopefully he gets through that one, and I don't have to eat my words and be like, oh well, here we go. Won Barcelona, lost first match in Madrid, but you never know. These things can definitely happen. I mean, it happens more often than you think. Ostapenko, she won Stuttgart and beat Swiatek and Sabalenka along the way, but lost in the first round of Madrid. So these things happen, especially when you're going from a tournament to the next tournament. But I think the extra couple days he got, compared to the women's tour from Barcelona to Madrid compared to Stuttgart to Madrid, I think will definitely help him, find his mojo and get things going. Other players who have had some success, over the last week or so on the clay is, Ben Shelton. Played extremely well. I mean, in Munich, it was an important tournament, I think, for him just to sort of improve his clay court game. He's one of those players, obviously on hard, he's always going to do quite well on grass as well. He's very good at serving and volleying, and just taking time away by coming into the net in general. But on clay is really where he needs to hone in his skills and develop those skills. And so the fact that he spent a good week in Munich, made the finals. Obviously, he had a very tough match towards the start of the week against Francisco Cerundolo, and I would say getting through that match built a lot of confidence into his game. It allowed him to, I would say, really just say, okay, you know what, I've just beaten a very, very good clay court player who, has taken a set off Carlos Alcaraz the week before in Monte Carlo, who's beaten Novak Djokovic at the French Open last year, albeit Novak did have that knee injury that came on during that match. But I'm still beating a very, very solid clay court player who's basically lived and breathed clay since the day he was born. So getting through that one is definitely quite important, and it's good to see. It's also obviously, he would have been quite happy to at least make the final because of his girlfriend being there for the first time watching him play live. So it's pretty good that he did that. Obviously, he did come against the local favorite, the local sort of superstar in Sasha Zverev. I think Zverev did have a bit of a sort of like Holger, but less so. Obviously, Holger didn't have too much pressure going into Barcelona because no one expected him to win the tournament going in. But everyone expects Zverev to win Munich going in. It's his home, it's in his country, it's home tournament. He's won the tournament twice before, albeit it being 6-7 years ago, when he was still that sort of rising star on the tour. But the fans are there to see Sasha win in Germany, and there's a lot of pressure. He had a very tough match against Talon Griekspoor. Obviously, Griekspoor having beaten him in Indian Wells earlier this season, knowing that Griekspoor can definitely bring it on any surface against Sasha. He was definitely quite nervous. Lost the first set as well to Talon, and then just showed a lot of spirit just to really fight through that one. So you could say both Ben and Sasha they were playing with house's money after they got through their very tough early matches. Obviously, the Talon Griekspoor match and the Francisco Cerundolo match for Sasha and Ben respectively, and they just built on the momentum that they got and the confidence that they got after those very, very tough wins. Both of them, obviously, had it been on a hard court, maybe it's a bit of a different story how you predict that match going into it. But obviously, being on a clay court with Sasha having been very successful on clay in the past. Won multiples Masters 1000 on clay in Madrid and in Rome. Reached the final of the French Open. Made the semis of the French before. He's got the repertoire and he's got the game for the clay. Whilst Ben is, as I said, he's still sort of honing those skills in and trying to develop those skills. But it's quite impressive, how Ben made that final. But Sasha obviously was the favorite going into that. He showed that by winning it in straight sets, and it was most definitely you hear people. I'm not going to exaggerate, but you hear people say, "Oh yeah, he's got his confidence back. He's got his mojo back. This is exactly what he needed." It's like, yeah, sure. I mean, he's got some confidence back. He's got some aspect of his game back, a little bit more control over his game, into mentally, you would say. But would I say he's 100% back? No. I mean, it doesn't. It's not one tournament that's going to change everything, And you could say this for the Holger Rune case, as I said. We need to see Holger do this across 2 or 3 tournaments to sort of say, okay, he's back. Same thing with Sasha. It's he's won Munich, obviously. But if I had to say, okay, who did you beat to win Munich along the way? Okay, Talon Griekspoor and Ben Shelton, big players, but they're not the biggest. When it comes to playing, the likes of Sinner, Djokovic, Alcaraz, where does he stack up? Where does he stack up? Or any other top 10 player, where does he stack up currently? Obviously, we know at the start of the season at the Australian Open where he stacked up against, the likes of Djokovic and, where he stacked up against Sinner. But we need to see this here in Rome. He played a great match here in Madrid, sorry. He played a great match against Bautista Agut in the first round, in his first match in the second round. But obviously, it's Bautista Agut. I want to see him deeper in these Masters 1000s and see really how he fares. He's obviously the defending champion of Rome, so he's got a lot of points on the line. He's made the final of the French Open last year. He's got a lot of ranking points on the line, so he needs to sort of find that game that we know he has in him. We've known that he's had this game in him for nearly 10 years now, probably more like 8 years. So realistically, where does he stack? Obviously, some confidence comes from winning Munich and some momentum there will be there. But I want to see it more consistently. I want to see more of this, and only time will tell. We can't rush this. It's not something like, oh well, he won Munich and whatever. It still hasn't done anything. No. We need to wait and see. We need to sort of take the time and just see how he performs in the matches. We can't make a judgment before. I think we need a couple more weeks to sort of make that judgment on Sasha. I don't think 1 week will change the judgment too much. It will shift the narrative a little bit, but it won't fully change the viewpoint. So in that sense, yeah, we'll see how he does in Madrid. He's won Madrid before in the past. The conditions are well suited for him, so hopefully he can go quite far, especially now with the fact that obviously, he is the top seed in Madrid. Alcaraz has withdrawn from the tournament. Djokovic, who knows what's going on in that sense. We'll touch on Djokovic in just a second. But okay, Medvedev, obviously, not the biggest fan of the clay. He's won Rome before, but, he's never really performed that well in Madrid. Who else is there that could really push him quite far? Rune, Tsitsipas, maybe, if he's not feeling as injured as he was in Barcelona. Matteo Berrettini, maybe. Casper Ruud. Zverev's got a chance of winning Madrid if he plays his absolute best. So we'll see. Going on to the likes of Novak Djokovic, of course, losing in Monte Carlo in his second round match, his first match, obviously there in a fair few years. Well, not in a fair few years, but his first round loss match there in a fair few years, you would say. To Alejandro Tabio, who beat him in Rome last year as well in straight sets on the clay. He came into Monte Carlo obviously off the back of Miami, knowing that it's a tough turnaround for him. He had the eye issue. He wasn't feeling great physically, and it's one of those things that he sort of set extremely low expectations on himself before the tournament came in. He said that to the press. He said it to everyone and anyone who asked. But did we expect him to lose in the second round, his first match in Monte Carlo? Not really. Would I have been a little bit more happy with him losing in 3 sets in a tight 3-setter? Probably not, actually, because then it meant that he did something well, but it just wasn't good enough. What happened in the straight sets lost to Tabio just showed that, okay, nothing was working, wasn't his day, and just was one of those matches. So it's one of those things. It's like, okay, so you're telling me that if the guy loses in straight sets quite comfortably, it's actually a more positive sign for him going forward than if he lost in a very, very tight, let's say 3-set, 7-6 tiebreak match. Yeah, probably. Because when you're talking about Novak Djokovic, the guy, if he is playing his absolute best, you would expect him to win those 3-set matches. Even if Tabia was playing lights out tennis, you would expect him to come through and sort of find a way to get through that 3-set match. Clearly, he wasn't playing well. Wasn't his day, unfortunately. It's just one of those things. It's one of those matches that you should sort of like you write it off. He lost in straight sets. It just shows, okay, back to the drawing boards. It wasn't working. I wasn't fully prepared for the tournament. I just came from hard court to clay court. Very, very quick turnaround. Not really, made the final in Miami. So lost the final though, but made the final in Miami. So positive momentum signs are there. Just wasn't for it to be in Monte Carlo. That's what I would say. That's my thought point. Obviously, then yesterday, I saw Djokovic practicing on court with Arthur Fils and with Andy Murray by his side, and he seemed quite negative. There was it was caught on camera by one of the Madrid Open cameras. Obviously, they have them quite all around the grounds there, and the audio picked up him saying "F tennis, F this sport, F everything." What do I take from that? I'm not too sure. I mean, I don't think you hear that coming from many. I don't think you would hear that coming from many players of his caliber. Multiple time Grand Slam champions, even more than multiple time. 24 times Grand Slam champions. But clearly he's frustrated with something. Hopefully, it's not really going to affect his game going into the tournament, going into his first match, because we want to see him play well. He's he's not really gone too far in Madrid over the last few years. There was that year in 2022 where Alcaraz played extremely well and beat Nadal, beat Djokovic on the way to the title, and beat Zverev as well. But I want to see Djokovic go far here in Madrid, because we see him go far sometimes in Rome. We see him go far, sometimes yes, sometimes though, over the last couple of years. Obviously, he said after Monte Carlo, what is your focus for the clay court season? And he said the French Open, Roland Garros. Yeah, great. But we want to see some positive signs before that he is finding his mojo, he is finding his rhythm. Obviously, this is his first clay tournament with Murray by his side. Let's see what effect that has on him. Obviously, Murray wasn't there in Monte Carlo. Not really going to put too much weight on that, but we'll see how much of a positive impact it has coming here into Madrid. I hope Djokovic does do well, because I think it's important for him to sort of have a little bit of positive signs before he goes into the French Open, whether it's a few match wins here and he loses a tight one to a very, very solid player, or in Rome, same thing. But I think he needs 3 or 4 wins, at least 4 wins at least, in my opinion, before going into the French Open. And yeah, obviously in a best of 5 set format, it's a completely different story. I mean, he's definitely got an edge over everyone else in a best of 5 set format, other than Carlitos or Yannick. Those are the players who can really bring it to him. But in terms of the rest of the field, he definitely has a massive advantage. So we'll see how Djokovic does in Madrid and in Rome. Other players who I really wanted to quickly touch upon during this, obviously there is Stefanos Tsitsipas, who was the defending champion in Monte Carlo, lost to Lorenzo Musetti in a match where you could say Tsitsipas should have won that match, but then Musetti was playing great tennis all week and he reached the final and took a set off of Alcaraz. So unfortunately, the match ended the way it did in terms of the Monte Carlo final, and Musetti had to sort of wobble his way to the finish line because he just couldn't play his best tennis due to an injury. But Tsitsipas, lost to Monte Carlo, then had to withdraw from his first match just 2 games in against Arthur Fils in Barcelona. He's here in Madrid. Hopefully, he seems quite positive, quite content from what I can see on the social medias. Hopefully, that injury wasn't really anything too serious, more just a preventative measure. Okay, if I play this match, it's going to be a few weeks out, so let me just withdraw and just make sure that I'm ready for these actual tournaments, these big tournaments. There are rumors of him going to be coached by Goran Ivanisevic after the clay court season. They are rumors. He's not confirmed them. He's not denied them. He has said that he cannot comment on them at this specific time. but that was obviously after his Monte Carlo loss. So is there maybe he was just a bit annoyed about his situation. But having Goran on his team, if it is to be, that would be great for him, especially on the serve, to get a little bit more. We saw what Goran did with Novak, especially on Novak's serve, and just the mentality and the winning ways. So hopefully that's something that comes true, and hopefully it's something that's successful. We need to see, because obviously Tsitsipas has gone quite down the rankings. I think he's just above the top 20, is like around that 17, 18, 19 mark. I can't remember exactly which number it is, but it's one of those things. It's like, okay, this guy was a top 3 player, and everyone was saying, oh, he's the next big thing, before the likes of Alcaraz and Sinner came along, and now he's outside of the top 15. So something needs to change, something needs to improve, and hopefully we can see that. Final thing I want to touch upon before we end the podcast is obviously Jannik Sinner is coming back. He's returning in Rome. We've seen a few clips here and there of him practicing in Monte Carlo and around there, especially with the likes of Jack Draper. So it's good to see him back on court. Hopefully, it's one of those things, like, you would hope he hits the ground running quite quickly. You don't know, because obviously practice is different to match play, but he is the world number 1, and it'll be great to have him back. We've had some big statements from big players such as Nadal saying, he's innocent. People should not be as mean as they are to him. If you're going to take your anger out to the system rather than to him, because he's followed all the procedures in line with the system. And then if you're angry with the system, that's another problem. Then you have a problem with, okay, what do you do about the system? But you don't, the player himself, Nadal was saying, you can't really blame him. He's followed the system protocol and he thinks he's innocent. So yeah, that's basically something to look forward to. Jannik Sinner coming back, but time will tell. As with many things, time will tell, especially with the list of these players that I've just mentioned in this episode. But with that, no, I think thank you all for listening in, watching, whether you're listening or whether you're watching it. Thank you all. If you're on YouTube, please like and comment and subscribe your thoughts. Leave us any questions. If you're listening on any other platform, just subscribe to the podcast, and we really appreciate the support. And with that, I believe in a couple of weeks' time there will be the next episode of the podcast, where we'll probably be previewing or looking at towards the end of Rome and stuff like that. So hopefully everything, all these players have a good, successful week and a half or so post it until the next episode. So we have some more positives to talk about. But yeah, thank you very much, and have a good one.